Africa and Kenya does not have enough employment opportunities. This is the question that you must ask. Because throughout history, it is young people who have provided the means via which societies have been transformed.
A child who is not impressed by the village will burn it down simply to feel its warmth. An African proverb warns. And today across Africa, that child is the youth, restless, jobless, and of course betrayed. Their cries echo in the streets of Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg as storm is rising, and in the thunder, one voice roars above the rest. Professor PLO Lumumba, fearless, uncompromising, and radical.
In the hope that you young men and women, 50 years from today, you shall contribute positively to the Negroid race.
Lumumba dares to speak the unspeakable, tear down colonial borders, banish corrupt leaders, and empower Africa's youth as builders, not beggars. This is not comfort. This is confrontation. This is a call to arms for a new generation. Are you ready to hear Lumumba's radical solutions for Africa's youth? Now press that subscription button and grab that bottle of beer, because the future will not wait.
You have been given an opportunity to elect. You elect a hyena to take care of goats, and then when the goats have been eaten, you wonder why.
Across Africa, the youth stand at a crossroad, abandoned by corrupt systems, betrayed by leaders who promised change but delivered chains. In their hunger for dignity, in their thirst for justice, the youth are ready to set fire to the old order. It is in this furnace of frustration and hope that one voice rises like thunder across the continent. The voice of Professor Lumumba, a man unafraid to speak truth to power. A man who believes that Africa's salvation lies not in the recycled hands of the old, but in the radical imagination of its young generations. Lumumba does not whisper comfort. He delivers some comfortable truths. He does not plead for patience. He demands urgency. For Lumumba, Africa's youth are not tomorrow's leaders. They are today's revolution, a revolution that is waiting to be unleashed. And his solutions, bold, fiery, and unapologetically radical.
Mobutu Sese Seko Kukumbendu Wanzamba. We must have men and women of integrity. Lazima tuwe na siasa ya maadili na miko.
Did you know that Africa is the youngest continent in the world? The median age is 19, yet Africa is the poorest, the most unequal, the most exploited. The rate of unemployment is very high in Africa. In Kenya, for example, more than 5 million youth are jobless. In Nigeria, youth unemployment has soared past 40%. There is brain drain in Africa, and every year thousands of doctors, engineers, and teachers, they all migrate to Europe and America. They leave villages in darkness and hospitals without healers. Africa has hopelessness. From South Africa's shack settlements to Sudan's war-torn streets, millions of youth see education not as a ladder, but as a trap.
I see your expectant faces, pregnant with hope.
Lumumba once said that our universities produce job seekers, not job creators. Our governments recycle leaders, not ideas, and our youth, the majority, are treated as the minority. And this This is the crisis, and it is from this crisis that his radical solutions are born.
The question then is, you who are young, you who are the hope of the continent of Africa, are you prepared to compete with the rest of the world?
Patrick Lumumba does not speak in half measures. His words are arrows. They pierce the heart of Africa's problems. His vision is clear. The youth must rise, and Africa must be reborn. Lumumba gives the first call radical solution, a call for Pan-Africanism. What he says breaking the colonial chains. Lumumba calls the borders of Africa as Berlin-made prisons. He dreams of an African where trade is not blocked by customs at 50 gates, where the youth of Ghana can work in Kenya, and where the inventions of Nigeria can transform Ethiopia. Lumumba declares that as long as Africa remains divided, she will remain weak, a playground for the West and the East.
What was the age of the young Europeans who came to this country in the 18th century to conquer Africa? What was the age of Henry Morton Stanley? What was the age of Speke and Huntington? They were in their 20s. They were unmarried. They came to this continent and captured this continent and enslaved us, our ancestors.
Lumumba demands for a leadership renewal. Out with the old. He attacks the curse of gerontocracy. This is where old men cling to power like ticks on a dying cow. Lumumba demands that the youth stop worshipping corrupt leaders and instead demand ethical, visionary, and a youthful leadership. He invokes the spirits of Sankara, Kwame Osejefo Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, leaders who were young when they shook empires. And another radical idea is education as a revolution, from theory to action. Lumumba denounces Africa's education as colonial relics. According to him, he wants schools to teach innovation, entrepreneurship, and problem solving, not just memorization. Lumumba asks, why do we train engineers who cannot build bridges, lawyers who defend thieves, and doctors who abandon their people?
Young Africans must have the opportunity to realize their potential. They must not go out to be humiliated.
Patrice Lumumba wants the youth to wage war on corruption and that there should be no sacred cows. Corruption, according to Lumumba, is the cancer killing Africa. He has thundered against Kenya's parliament, Nigeria's oligarchs, and South Africa's looters. His solution is very radical. Public trials, real punishment, leaders removed from offices, not endless accusations and committees. Lumumba advocates for youth economic empowerment simply because youth are national builders. He insists that Africans must stop exporting raw materials and importing poverty. Lumumba calls for industrial runs by Africans, digital revolutions owned by Africans, and agriculture feeding Africa before feeding the West. Lumumba believes that the youth, brave, creative, connected, are the engines of these revolutions.
Young people have always been at the center of conquest. I'm speaking to you young people. Nelson Mandela in 1964, Oliver Tambo in South Africa, Sam Nujoma and Toivo ya Toivo in Namibia, Tino Neito in Angola, and Holden Roberto and Jonas Maviro Savimbi. They were young people.
These Lumumba solutions are very radical. They are very radical because he calls parliament the house of hyenas. He mocks leaders who borrow in the morning, steal at noon, and beg by evening. Lumumba challenges Africa to reject aid dependency He who feeds you controls you. Africa must feed herself or forever remain a slave, says so Lumumba. These are not very polite suggestions. They are declarations of war against a rotten order.
Africa must have one government, Africa must have one army, Africa must have one common defense, Africa must have one currency, Africa must have one government, because if we don't do that, you will get used to your little countries and Africa will be weak. Let us look neither east nor west, let us look forward.
And history of us prove that youth-led radical solutions work and work very well. Thomas encouraged that 3 transformed Burkina Faso. He rejected foreign aid, planted millions of trees, and of course, he empowered women. Julius Malema in South Africa is rallying the youth against economic apartheid. Bobi Wine in Uganda is standing as a young lion against dictatorship. And in Kenya in 2023 and 2024, the Gen Z protests shook the government, forcing policy retreats. Lumumba's voice echoes in all these movements, whether directly or indirectly.
Then what has happened? The politicians have now mastered this to impoverish the people, and of course when the people are impoverished, then they want instant gratification. Corruption. I speak about and write about and against corruption. We love drama.
The child who is not impressed by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. Lumumba believes Africa is at that moment. The youth are tired of waiting. They are tired of speeches. They are tired of corruption dressed in suits. Lumumba calls them to rise, not with stones and anger alone, but with vision, courage, and radical imagination. Africa will be built not by the old who recycle their failures, but by the young who dares to dream. And so I leave you with this equation. If you are an African youth listening to this video at the red mic, will you wait for the village to impress you, or will you build a new village with your own hands? The answer will shape Africa's destiny. This is the red mic.